Friends, today I am sharing a true life story of a Quran memorizer who, after her death, her grave was found filled with snakes and scorpions. But what could she have done during her lifetime to deserve such a punishment? Stay with us until the end of this story to uncover the lessons from this true life event. After the Fajr dawn prayer, a grave digger named Abdul Rahman prepared to head to the cemetery. He was assigned to dig a grave for the deceased Hafiza that morning. As he walked, he felt an unusual heaviness in his legs, as if something was holding him back. The previous night, Abdul Rahman had received the news of her death and was requested to dig the grave early so she could be buried without delay. Abdul Rahman had thought to himself, "Oh Allah, surely she must be one of your beloved servants. How fortunate I am to be tasked with this service. Forgive my sins, both those I know and those I do not, as a reward for this task." After completing the Fajr prayer, he arrived at the cemetery with his tools. Yet, he couldn't shake the uneasiness that had taken hold of him, an unusual feeling he had never experienced in his years of digging graves. He selected a spot in the cemetery and began digging, but as soon as his spade struck the earth, it felt unnaturally heavy. The soil was hard, and stones surfaced with every strike. Convinced that the spot was unsuitable, he moved to another location to dig. Then, something happened that filled him with fear. His body began to sweat profusely, and his breathing quickened. He thought, "Oh Allah, what is happening to me? I've dug countless graves, but never have I encountered anything like this." Unable to continue, he sat down to rest. By then, the funeral procession had arrived. Abdul Rahman noticed that, for the first time that year, there were more children than adults in attendance. Their faces were swollen from crying, and they continuously recited the Shahada. They cried out, "Farewell, dear teacher. May Allah make your journey easy." The Hafiza had taught these children the Quran, and despite their young age, they had come to pay their respects, showing how deeply they cared for her. On one side, the body was being brought for burial. On the other, Abdul Rahman sat silently, overwhelmed by the size of the crowd. He had never seen so many children at a funeral before. As he looked toward the grave, unease filled his heart. The sight of so many mourners suggested that the Hafiza had been a pious woman. But when her body was placed into the grave, an astonishing event occurred. The ground trembled, as if something was stirring within it. Suddenly, a large black, two-headed snake emerged and began striking the body repeatedly. Screams filled the air as people pulled the body out of the grave. The snake slithered back into the pit, where scorpions now crawled. Shocked, the crowd began questioning how such a thing could happen to someone who had spent her life teaching children the Quran. Fearing further disturbance, the people requested Abdul Rahman to dig another grave. But each time he started digging, the same horrifying scene occurred. Snakes and scorpions filled the grave. Two men whose children had studied under the Hafiza sought the counsel of a respected scholar, an alim. The alim was shocked by what he heard and rushed to the cemetery. Upon seeing the grave, he recited blessings and pondered the reasons for such a punishment. The alim suggested taking the body to the mosque for further examination. Although people had spoken highly of the Hafiza's character during her life, doubts began to surface. Some whispered, questioning whether she had secretly committed sins. The alim addressed the crowd, urging them to remain silent. "Only Allah knows who is truly righteous or sinful," he said. Yet the question persisted. Why was her grave filled with snakes and scorpions? The alim then instructed the children who had studied under the Hafiza to come forward. Gently, he asked them, "Did your teacher ever mistreat you? Was she ever harsh or unkind?" The children replied in unison, "No, she was a kind teacher. She never raised her hand against us. We learned our first Quranic lessons from her." The alim then asked for her parents. Two men stepped forward and informed him that her parents had passed away long ago and she had no family left. Deeply troubled, the alim performed ablution and offered 2 units of prayer, seeking guidance from Allah. With tears streaming down his face, he prayed, "Oh Allah, what sin did this girl commit to deserve such a fate?" The investigation continued. Neighbors revealed that the Hafiza had a close friend with whom she had once shared all her joys and sorrows. However, the friend had moved away due to a dispute. The alim sent 2 men to find this friend and bring her back to the mosque. When the friend arrived, she began to recount the story. I used to live in this village. She was my neighbor. We both memorized the Quran together in our childhood, but since her father passed away when she was very young, all the household responsibilities fell on her shoulders. She started teaching children the Quran and accepting small gifts in return. Many children came to her for lessons, and the wealthier families would often support her financially. This way, she and her mother managed to live a reasonably good life. But over time, her mother fell sick. At first, my friend cried a lot, prayed for her mother's recovery, and took good care of her. But as her mother's health worsened to the point where she could no longer remember anything, she would often act like a child. She became increasingly ill with age and eventually lose her mind. Also, unfortunately, became a burden to her daughter. My friend became increasingly frustrated. Even when her mother called out to her for help, she would often ignore her, making excuses about being busy. Sometimes her mother would soil the bed because she was too weak to get up, and my friend would have to clean it up, but she did so grudgingly, often neglecting to change the bed sheets if she felt like it. She would give her mother food if she wants, or the poor woman would remain hungry and thirsty. I once witnessed her mother begging, crying out for water repeatedly, but my friend ignored her. In the end, I was the one that gave her the water she so desperately needed. After drinking, she clung to me, weeping bitterly and complaining about her daughter. When my friend heard this, she came and slapped her mother hard across the face, yelling, "What haven't I done for you? My life is ruined because of you. All my money is spent on your treatment, and still, you keep complaining and embarrassing me in front of others." I couldn't stand to see this. I slapped my friend in return and left her house, never to return. I moved away from this village. A few days after I left, her mother passed away, and now my friend has also passed away. Hearing this, everyone realized that the Hafiza had failed to honor her mother, despite being outwardly pious. Allah commands us not to even utter a word of frustration like oof to our parents, yet she had treated her mother with disrespect. Overwhelmed, the crowd began to cry and seek forgiveness for their own shortcomings. The alim declared, "This is now a matter between her and Allah." With no other option, they buried her body alongside the snakes and scorpions. Friends, let this story serve as a powerful reminder. No matter the circumstances, never disrespect your parents. Disobedience to parents brings severe consequences in this life and the hereafter. I pray that Allah grants us the ability to honor and serve our parents and forgives us for any shortcomings. If you found this story meaningful, please like and subscribe for more videos and share it so others can learn from it as well.